Hi, James.
Hello.
I'll tell you what it is. With so much unrest and so much fear within the Jewish community, most of these pro-Palestinian protests erupt in violence. There's there's hate that's called out, and I think...
No, they don't, because I have to be clear on this.
What happens when someone walks into a live radio debate armed with outrage, but leaves exposed by facts? Because that's exactly what you're about to witness. A caller phones in, absolutely convinced she's standing on the moral high ground. Her claim that pro-Palestinian marches are nothing more than hate-filled violent mobs, no nuance, no room for complexity, just a sweeping accusation wrapped in fear and certainty. It's the kind of emotionally charged narrative we've been hearing everywhere lately. The idea that if people march in protest, especially on this issue, it must automatically be fueled by hatred. That anger equals violence, that solidarity equals extremism. But here's the problem. When you bring a claim like that into a live conversation, you'd better be ready to defend it with something stronger than feelings. And as this call unfolds, what starts as a confident moral indictment slowly unravels. The certainty fades, the accusations get challenged, and by the end of it, the person who thought she was exposing hate ends up revealing something far more uncomfortable. Not violence, not extremism, but contradiction. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now let's break this down together. Listen carefully to how this starts, and pay attention to how quickly emotion collides with reality. I'll give you my full thoughts once we've unpacked it.
Hi, James.
Hello.
I'll tell you what it is. With so much unrest and so much fear within the Jewish community, most of these pro-Palestinian protests erupt in violence. There's hate that's called out, and I think...
No, they don't, because I have to be clear on this. They don't erupt in violence. There've been I think there were 9 arrests and there've been 5 charges, including people arrested for attacking... Well, I'll run you through it all, actually. There's been a racially aggravated public order offence by a person of no fixed abode who allegedly shouted racist abuse. There's a public order offence after a can of beer was allegedly thrown at a protester in Whitehall. There's been an actual bodily harm charge after an officer was allegedly assaulted and suffered a head injury, which also happened at the Countryside Alliance March a few years ago. And then you've got another racially aggravated public order offence relating to an allegedly racist placard. And then you've got a 16-year-old boy who can't be identified because of his age, has been charged with a public order offence after directing verbal abuse at officers. So you understand I can't let you say they always erupt into violence when they categorically don't.
Well, there is a lot of hate. I mean, they're looking
let's
for...
not gloss over it. You have to accept that you cannot say they always erupt into violence when they categorically don't.
No, but there are things that that the police won't and can't pick up on.
If that's the basis of your position, then your position becomes untenable immediately.
There is hate. Would you not agree with that?
There's hate everywhere. There's hate on the West Bank at the moment. You've seen what the American Secretary
James, can I say anything?
Yes, of course you can, as long as it's true.
When you think about the fear that Jewish people are feeling all over the country, something that exacerbates that and something that makes them feel even more scared. I mean, there are no Jewish people that would feel comfortable to go into a Palestinian protest, and even the word
there were Jewish people on it.
There
were Jewish people on the march, and you've seen the footage from Central Station in New York as well of Jewish people protesting.
They're far extremists, and in terms of their support, their anti-Israel narrative. But that it's not. But if the fact is that people would be scared to go to a protest like that, whereas in direct contrast to that, the Israeli...
But again, I'm sorry you feel I'm interrupting you, but if you say things that aren't true, I have to. There were Jewish people on the march on Saturday.
Okay. But the majority...
So they wouldn't be... You can't say they'd be scared to go, can you?
It is very scary. It is very
scary.
No,
I'm not disputing that you're scared. I'm just disputing your claim that it always erupts into violence and that Jewish people would be too scared to attend to demonstrate their sympathy for Palestinian people being killed. Because neither of those things are true.
No, what I'm not saying is that people can't march in solidarity, but the fact is it's a protest which ends up often being anti-Israel. There were 3 women who were wearing pictures
out of 100,000 people.
That's not the point. The point is that
it is. Of course, it's the point.
Fear.
Of course, it's the point, because you can call those people hateful, you can call those people insightful, but you can't call the march a hate march. Because of what 3 women did.
Between a march and a protest rather than a vigil or like solidarity, there's a big difference.
Well, you can call it whatever you want.
With hate. No, but there is a difference. You can't dispute that.
I can dispute anything I want.
Standing peacefully in vigil and thinking about the people that hurt the victims, etc. And absolutely, I think no one wants to see.
So it's the fact that they're walking.
Civilians.
It's the fact that they're walking.
It has a much angrier tone.
Well, there is huge anger about all the Palestinians being killed, just as there was huge anger about all the Israelis killed on October the 7th. You must have been angry. You must have been angry.
I was devastated. Okay. It was heartbreaking.
Well, I was angry.
It's a very different. Well, there's a very different.
I was very, very angry. I don't know if you heard the show. I was absolutely livid.
Yeah, but what were you angry about?
The murder of 1,400 Israelis.
But was that anger directed at the horrific terrorists?
Of course it was.
Was that compassion and devastation for the victims?
It was both. Unthinkable, unjustifiable, intolerable were the words that I used to describe what Hamas had done. Heartbreaking, utterly, utterly devastating were the words that I used to describe the victims. So why can't people be angry? Why can't people be angry about Palestinians being killed as well?
I just want to shout out that the first day that you did your show was brilliant. You were really compassionate, really kind, really sensitive, absolutely.
And really angry.
Yes, but I think there's more anger. It's about compassion and being devastated.
And being angry.
Do something.
And being angry. So if I'm allowed to be angry about the killing of Israelis, why can't I be angry about the killing of Gazans? Why can't people march in anger at the killing of Palestinians?
It's about compassion. That's the difference.
Okay. So how do people show their compassion?
Anger then says, who can I fight? Anger is, who can I punish?
And that's why I had to pick you up at the beginning on the claims that it always erupted into violence when it simply doesn't. So no one's really looking for a fight.
Anger.
No one's looking for a fight.
I don't mean violence I mean violence as in anger, and that leads on to who can I blame?
You can't, unfortunately. Suella Braverman might want to outlaw anger, but even she would struggle to pull that one off, Anna. You can't tell people what they can and can't be angry about any more than I would dream of telling you.
Absolutely, but we can have expectations.
Go on.
The anger then channels into anti-Israel.
Well,
that is what happens.
And then it becomes problematic. But until it does, it isn't.
But
when you say anti-Israel, you could say anti-Israeli army, anti-Likud.
But that's not true.
Well, I don't know that you can read the minds of everybody.
Very interesting. I don't know if you've looked at the works of the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs.
I'm familiar with some of his work, yes.
He has an incredible video that he's explaining how sometimes actually anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism. How it's changed over from the Middle Ages.
You're going a little bit off message now because what we're talking.
You're saying that it's not anti-Israel. It's also anti-Semitic.
I'm not. I'm saying you can't read anybody's mind. There are plenty of people in Israel who've got huge problems with what is going on. Are they anti-Semitic?
And that's what I believe Suella Braverman.
Are they anti-Semitic?
No, people can have issues with the policies.
People can be angry about policies, and they can be Jewish, and they can be angry with Israeli policies, but you wouldn't dream of calling them anti-Semitic.
But I haven't heard any pro-Palestinian march that's come out to condemn Hamas.
Well, how much attention have you been paying? How many of them have you spoken to?
Plenty.
Really?
Yeah, it's very interesting having conversations.
But you were too frightened to attend.
An excuse.
You were too frightened to attend.
But I would never go to a protest.
So when did you talk to them?
Other people.
So when did you talk to them?
I've spoken to individuals.
Yeah, when?
With their opinions.
When?
Over the last couple of weeks.
How?
And there's always an excuse.
But how have you spoken to these? How have you spoken? No, of course you can't. Not if you're going to come on my radio and say things that aren't true.
But it is true.
Well, of course it isn't. Every single
Ariana Grande concert.
Well, I don't want to imagine that. I'm talking about marches. Stop it.
I feel bad for the people that were killed, but
you're making stuff up again.
Very, very frustrated.
You're making stuff up again.
No, I'm not. That's exact same parallel.
You're having an imaginary conversation about a completely different atrocity.
No, but what I'm saying to you is the fact is that there needs to be condemnation.
Just before you go, where is your expression? I know you would avail yourself of this opportunity, your compassion for the people being killed in Gaza now.
Absolutely. I said that straight away. I said that earlier on. I said, I do not want to see any innocent civilians, and it's horrific, and it's heartbreaking, and I read an article.
So would you call for it to end then?
I would call for Israel to do whatever it can to
But you can't have it both ways, can you?
It's called self-defense.
Okay, well, that's not called compassion then.
and they've
No, that's
notified
fine.
all the residents to move.
We got there in the
It
end.
is compassion, of course there is compassion.
Well, no, because the people marching are calling for a ceasefire, and you're calling for it to continue, while claiming that, while complaining that that other people aren't being compassionate. So the people calling for the killing to end are the angry ones who are causing fear, and you calling for it to continue are the compassionate one. Do you see where you've ended up, Anna?
No, but
No,
Israel
you
could
probably
have
don't, do you?
What we just witnessed wasn't just a radio exchange, it was a live demonstration of something much deeper. The clash between emotional certainty and factual scrutiny. This wasn't about who spoke louder, it wasn't about scoring debate points, it was about what happens when a worldview built on fear runs headfirst into calm, documented reality. Anna's argument wasn't constructed around verified patterns or consistent evidence. It was built around how the protests felt to her. Tense, angry, unsettling. And in modern politics, that's often enough to convince people. If something feels threatening, it must be dangerous. If it feels hostile, it must be hateful. But here's the problem. Feelings are powerful, yes, but they aren't proof. And that's where the shift happened. James didn't mock her, he didn't escalate, he didn't respond with outrage. Instead, he calmly separated isolated incidents from sweeping claims. He challenged exaggerations, he forced precision, and in doing so, he exposed something bigger than one caller's opinion. He exposed performative compassion. That's when someone uses the language of empathy. Heartbreaking, devastating, terrifying, and while supporting actions that extend the very suffering they say they mourn. Because here's the contradiction at the center of this debate. The marchers she described as angry were calling for the violence to stop. They were demanding a ceasefire. Meanwhile, she framed herself as the compassionate voice, but defended the continuation of military action under the banner of self-defense. So the people asking for the bombing to end are labeled dangerous, and the person defending its continuation claims the moral high ground? That tension is the real takeaway. James's final questions weren't cheap tricks. They forced clarity. If anger at one group's suffering is justified, and it absolutely is, then anger at another group's suffering can't suddenly become illegitimate. Compassion isn't just something you declare, it's something you demand in outcomes. And that's the uncomfortable truth this conversation revealed.